took place in 3 steps over a period of 18 months. The first step, or some sentimental display of colors without history. Our flag is a symbol of the national wounds and scars that we bear from the Liberation War. Every great warrior is to lay down his weapon. The shield and spears on our national flag symbolize victory. But even with independence, a national flag and a national anthem, the Queen continued to serve as Kenya's head of state. When the Queen vacated her position as head of state, and with this act, Kenya transitioned into a full republic, or Jamhuri, making the total liberation of our country. On this memorable day in 19, and on the same day, the Governor General became the last expatriate occupant of Government House here in Nairobi. To commemorate this change of guard, the first president planted a Mugumo tree at the exact spot where our flag had been hoisted at midnight of December 12th, 1900 to my 100. December 12th is therefore a joyous day for Kenya, because we marked the 50th or when freedom would come. In fact, many confessed in their memoirs that many times they had doubt that their cause would ever see the light of day. And although their walk to freedom was long and hard, the only thing that sustained them was the burning conviction of the righteousness of their cause. They were troubled on every side, but never distressed. They were perplexed, but they never fell into despair. So fellow Kenyans, when we congregate at this place of remembrance, we are all called on to renew the soul of our nation. We are called to appreciate the pain felt and sacrifices made by those who went before us. The fallen soldiers and heroes buried in unmarked graves in prisons and camps all over our country. And that is why the project under construction behind us was initiated. Apart from being a place of remembrance and healing, this place will be an arena where the past, the present, and the future will converge. When Kenyans walk through the Heroes Boulevard, their spirits will be edified by the sacrifice our liberators made. And at the end of the boulevard, there will be the tomb of the unknown warrior, a warrior whose name we do not know, although he died in battle for our country, and a warrior whose mother let him go, and both mother and son sacrificed so that we can be free. Once completed, this place of history will rekindle memories of our armed struggle and also the good, the bad, as well as the ugly of our history. At the Hall of Legends, it will bring alive our legendary ancestors, including Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Mikatalili wa Menza, Koitalel Arap Samoei, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Nabongo Mumia, Laibon Lenana, Dedan Kimathi, among many others. At the Tunnel of Martyrs, we will have a solemn memorial to each and every Kenyan who has lost their lives in the many watershed moments. This will range from the First to the Second World War, all the way to the victims of the post-election violence of 2008. In the rope gallery of this museum, a named rope will be dedicated to every one of the 1,090 heroic souls that were hanged during the colonial era. And at the Moments of Darkness gallery, we shall display the history of our country of our lowest moments, the moments that we regret but are part of our history. But not all the galleries will be sad news. The Hall of Innovation in this museum will celebrate the brilliant, game-changing ideas produced by Kenyans. This hall will speak to the future and how our past has guided it. And the hall, again behind me, marked by a pointed spear, will characterize our latest exploits, our moments of great hope and national pride, and our bold path into the future. So, fellow Kenyans, this place will be a book of history, an illumination of the future, weaved in hope, written in pictures, sculptures, and historic artifacts. And although the place of remembrance will also be a place of pain, it will also be an altar for historical forgiveness. As Kenyans walk through the galleries of the heroes and legends, they must forgive those who trespassed against them. However, they must also heed the call from our founding father when he said, "We will forgive them, but we will never forget." We must forgive our transgressors, but we must never forget their name. Fellow Kenyans, finally our founding fathers brought us to this garden of remembrance to teach us that nation building is not a sprint, it is a relay. No single person or group of persons can make this undertaking alone. Liberation was achieved because it was a product of teamwork. And it must be recorded that the founding fathers were not a team because they worked together. They were a team because they reinforced each other and had deep respect and trust for one another. They taught us that nation building is like building a house. This endeavor is a product of teamwork and not individualism. They built a firm foundation for a prosperous Kenya. Others amongst them built the walls and others roofed the house. Everyone had a role to play, and no role was greater or lesser than the other. The same is true today as it was then. We are building a house called Kenya, and there is no place for one-manism in this project. It is the collective work of every able-bodied Kenyan. And yes, we will disagree at times, but in our disagreements, we must always remain respectful. In fact, respectful disagreements are what lead to reconciliation. More so, because when we disagree, it is a sign that we are making progress. The making of a nation and the building of a house are a living process. They cannot be static and must be dynamic. Errors are made sometimes, and renovations must correct them after the house is completed. Indeed, in the recent past, in December of 1991, it was established that the one-party system was a design error in our nationhood, and the advancement of the Republic had outlived its usefulness, and we made renovations and changed the system. In 2007, we ran into another defect in our nation-building project, and we discovered that the politics of exclusion, in which the winner takes all, was not good for our country, and we were bold enough to change our constitution and expand the executive in order to accommodate the excluded. And indeed, when the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and I shook hands on March 8th of 2018, it was because we saw a crack on the wall of our nation. We had run 2 elections that costed the country in excess of 1 trillion shillings. These losses made us see that we were staring at a nation divided right in the middle. But because we had disagreed respectfully, We knew that this was a mark of progress, and though it was difficult, the necessity, the reason, and recognition that we as Kenyans need each other, nation before self, as our forefathers had taught us, to come together reinforced our resolve. Therefore, again, I will continue to say that we need to come together and mend the crack on the wall of our nation, and this, I believe, is what necessitated the First Amendment to our Constitution. And although it encountered some legal obstacles, I say again today that BBI is just a dream deferred. One day, someday, it will happen. Because just as the country cannot survive ethnic majoritarianism and exclusion, just in the same breath, it cannot survive unfair and skewed representation. This is a design defect, and we must fix it. Fellow Kenyans, the Garden of the People, therefore, is not just a place of remembrance. It was gifted to us as a place where generations shall tell stories of where we have come from, where we are, and indeed where we are going. It is an arena of truth, narrated before God, verified by history, and reinforced by the acts of our founding fathers and each and every one of us as we move through life. And it is a convergence point between our past, our present. It must also, therefore, be our guide for the future. Allow me, as I conclude, to give a thought towards that future. If the Asian tigers were at the same level of development as Kenya in 1963, and I remind Kenyans that our country, our nation, actually lent South Korea money to implement its development plan in 1963. The question we therefore must ask ourselves is, what happened? Why were we unable to develop as fast as those did? This future did not happen because we failed to plan for it. The future evaded us because we failed to imagine it. And I say so because imagination is more powerful than knowledge. For the past to have an impact on our future, we must constantly imagine and reimagine it. Indeed, as we envision the future, we are also reminded that in 8 years' time, our economic blueprint, that is the Kenya Vision 2030, will have run its course. By then, Kenya will be home to Kenya turns 100. In the year 2063, we will be home to 100 million citizens. For us to secure the elusive shared prosperity and intergenerational equity, we must be bold in our imagination of Kenya at 100. But our imagination cannot follow the popular path. It must follow the bold path. And indeed, Vision 2063 must be a bold imagination of what Kenya's vision looks is the task of our generation. Indeed, as our children will walk through the bullet, what account of ourselves will we have left in this unedited place of history? It must be written in this unedited book of history that we chose the bold path over the popular path. Indeed, as it is said, the lion is not the strongest animal in the savannah, neither is it the biggest, neither is it the shrewdest, but it is the boldest, and that is why it is the king. Indeed, it is for this very same reason that it is said that an army of sheep led by a lion can defeat an army of lions led by a sheep. The future of Kenya, inspired by the past and present, must be about a brave imagination. That is why today I congratulate the young men and women of the 19th Battalion of the Kenya Rifles, to whom I have presented the presidential and regimental colors today. We must celebrate our defense forces because when they go to war in the defense of our borders, they know too well that they will either return hoisting our national flag or return wrapped in our national flag. This takes boldness and dedication. So, fellow Kenyans, as I now end my address, I want to remind of a promise I made on the 20th of October 2021, where I directed the Ministry of Energy to fast-track the implementation of the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force on Power Purchase Agreements. I am pleased to note that the pathway to reduce the cost of electricity by over 30% is on course. In honor of this pledge to the nation and in response to the concerns of the high cost of electricity raised both by individual customers and enterprises, I am pleased to announce to the nation that the reduction of the cost of electricity will be implemented in 2 tranches of 15% each, with the first 15% achieved through initial actions focusing on system and commercial losses, and this will be reflected in people's bills in December of this year. A further 15% reduction will happen in the first quarter of 2022. In realizing the second tranche of reduction in power bills, I note that the Ministry of Energy and other government departments have initiated engagement with independent power producers aimed at renegotiation of power purchase agreements so as to give our country better value for money for our consumers. I urge the power producers to demonstrate goodwill as we seek to make our energy sector a greater catalyst of our national development. So as we move to the new year 2022, I would wish to leave you with the words of our founding president as he wished our new republic a Merry Christmas 57 years ago. And in it he urged our good men and women to be of service to their fellow countrymen. And indeed his New Year message was, and I quote, "Let everyone who is educated teach others to read and write. Let every man who is healthy help a man who is sick. Let every man who has work find some prospect for a man that is poor and not employed. Let service be our inspiration for the future," end of quote. And with this message, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a prosperous 2022. Asanteni sana wenzangu. Leo nimesema sitaongea mengi. Juzi nilipata nafasi kule bunge ya kutaja mambo mbalimbali ambayo serikali ambayo naiongoza tumeweza kuyatenda. Siku ya leo ni pahali ambapo patasaidia sisi kama Wakenya kujikumbusha mema na mazuri ambayo tumeweza kuyatenda, yale mabaya ambayo tumepitia na ambayo tuwatakikana tusome ndio tusirudie, na pia yale maovu ambayo yametendeka ambaye lazima kama nchi tujikinge na tuhakikishe ya kwamba hatuwezi tena kurudi kwa umwagikaji wa damu. Ningependa nichukue fursa hii kushukuru huu mradi wa kujenga hii Uhuru Gardens. Nianze kwanza